Good morning and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Plant-Based Foods in Europe, How Big is the Market? I can see people are still joining, so we're just going to give it a couple of minutes, or not even, just a few seconds. Okay, let's begin. My name is Donovan. I'm the Director of ProVeg South Africa. It's my pleasure today to introduce the webinar, introduce the speaker, and to moderate the Q&A. For those of you who don't know ProVeg, we're an international food awareness organization with a presence in Germany, the UK, USA, Netherlands, Spain, Poland, China, and where I am in South Africa. We work with international decision-making bodies, governments, food producers, investors, the media, and the general public to help transition the world to a society and economy that are more sustainable for humans, animals, and our planet by replacing conventional animal products with plant-based and cellular and cultivated alternatives. We work with food producers, retailers, and caterers to develop more plant-based products, make them more attractive and accessible, therefore allowing them to benefit from the fast-growing plant-based trend. Today's webinar, we'll present recently launched European plant-based food sector report based on data from Nielsen, which is part of the Smart Protein project. And I have no doubt that you'll benefit from some of the insights we will share. I can see we still have a few people joining. So while we give them a couple more minutes, I can get some housekeeping out of the way. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the session, hopefully around 15 minutes. Although you are all automatically on mute, if you do want to ask a question, please use the Q&A function. You'll see there's a little block at the bottom of the screen. Submit those and we will try our best to answer as many as we can at the end. There's also a chat function. Please get on the chat function. Let us know where you're watching from, what your interest is in the plant-based food sector. It's always great at these kind of events to network with people who are working in a similar space to us. So please don't be shy. Get on there. Let's try to keep this interactive. To keep it interactive, we're also going to have a few polls. Our speaker will ask a couple of questions. It'll be very simple. You just need to click the answer you think it is. We will show you the results. So please answer those polls when they come up. The presentation is about 40 minutes long, after which we'll move straight into the Q&A and try to field as many questions as possible. This webinar will also be recorded, so you will be able to watch it back again on the Smart Protein website. Lastly, before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Smart Protein project. Smart Protein is a 10 million euro EU funded project that seeks to develop the next generation of foods that are cost-effective, resource-efficient, and nutritious. Alternative protein sources will be used to generate ingredients and plant-based meats using sources like legumes and byproducts from beer and pasta production. The project is a partnership between more than 30 external partners, including universities, research institutions, corporations, and NGOs. As at ProVeg, we are one of the partners and we're responsible for communication work as well as the market and consumer studies to some extent. So all of the data presented today falls within the larger Smart Protein project. So with all of that out of the way, I can see we have quite a big audience. So thank you very much for joining, and we can see the chat's already going. So please keep that up. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker today. She was the person who led the European plant-based food sector report, and she is Dr. Kai-Brit Bechtold. She is the senior consumer research scientist at ProVeg International. She's a lecturer with extensive experience in developments, trends, and data in the food sector, and her passion for sustainable food and her knowledge of the insights into consumer trends and behavior position her as a leading expert in the plant-based food sector. We're very, very happy and privileged to have her speaking to us today. So over to you, Kai-Brit.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Don, for making this kind introduction. A warm welcome to everyone also from my side. Well, In the last 3 months of 2020, some of the biggest companies in the world announced major moves into the plant-based space. In September, Tesco, the UK's largest supermarket chain, announced plans to increase sales of plant-based meat products 300% by 2025. In November, Unilever, one of the largest food and beverage manufacturers, set a new annual global sales target of $1.2 billion from plant-based meat and dairy within the next 5 to 7 years. And a few days later, IKEA announced that half its restaurant meals and 80% of its packaged food offerings would be plant-based by 2025. These moves have largely been made in response to growing consumer demand, illustrating the fundamental shift in food consumption in the direction of sustainable, healthy, plant-based food. Plant-based food, like plant-based meat, fish, and dairy alternatives, are a huge business opportunity for companies providing annual double or even triple-digit growth rates. We are really happy to finally show you the tremendous growth of plant-based food in Europe over the last few years reflected in numbers. ProVeg analyzed Nielsen scanning data on plant-based food categories in several European countries and recently published a report on it. The report is available online and for free, and additionally, the download page will be sent to you after the webinar per email as well as the recording and the webinar slides. Just a reminder, we have a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we will answer your questions in the last 15 minutes of the presentation. Well, let me first tell you more about the data itself we analyzed. ProVeg analyzed Nielsen retail scanning data from 11 European countries that you can see here: Austria, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Poland, Romania, Spain, and the UK. Nielsen scanning data is the most reliable and valid data one can analyze when it comes to retail business. This is what people actually really buy in the supermarket. Well, 2 different channels or markets were included in each country. The first channel included the sales data of all supermarkets together. This is the total market, including discounters. And the second channel was about the sales data for the discounters being analyzed separately. For those of you who are not so familiar with discounters, discounters are characterized by relatively low price points and by offering large quantities and a limited range of goods. Common examples are Aldi, Lidl, or Penny. We analyze sales value in euros for all countries, for instance, also for the UK. In the report, you can also find numbers on sales volume in kilogram or liters. The data included 3 different revolving periods: MAT 2020, which is the so-called moving annual total 2020. So this is the period between October 2019 to September 2020. MAT 2019, which is the period between October 2018 to September 2019, and MAT 2018, which is the period between October 2017 to September 2018. So each period, or MAT, moving annual total, is a revolving year consisting of 12 months. Sales value in euros for 6 plant-based food categories and their subsegments were evaluated: plant-based meat, milk, yogurt, cheese, fish, and ice cream. Plant-based ice cream is not covered in this webinar, but data can be found in the sector report. All right, we now proceed with the results, and we will first look at the European plant-based market overview, which provides tremendous growth rates for the whole plant-based food sector, and then continue with our category deep dives, which reveal huge growth opportunities for all plant-based food categories separately and their subsegments. Well, I have a poll for you. So what growth rate would you expect to see for the European plant-based food sector over the past 2 periods? Well, would you expect a slight growth of 5%, or even a stronger growth of 13, 26, or 49%? I give you around 20 seconds to vote, and you should be able to see the poll on your screen now. So please choose your answer and then press the blue submit button. I see that answers are entered right now. Okay, I guess we have a clear winner. Well, yeah, you're really good actually. 48% of you voted for a growth rate of 49%. And actually, let's find it out if this is true. Well, fantastic news. You were totally right. Over the past 2 years, the European plant-based food market grew by a staggering 49% in terms of sales value. So this indicates that Euro sales of plant-based foods grew from 2.4 billion euros in MAT 2018 to incredible 3.6 billion euros in the latest period. In more detail, this means that in the last period, the whole European plant-based food market grew by an amazing 28%, leading to these incredible 3.6 billion euro sales value. So this means that between October 2019 and September 2020, 3.6 billion euros were made with plant-based foods in Europe, whereas in the period before, 2.8 billion euros were made with these products. And in the period before, the market grew by 16%. Discounters have a share of around 11%, which highlights the fact that plant-based food has really gone mainstream, being available in all kinds of shopping locations. Looking at these incredible numbers, we highly recommend to focus on the development of new plant-based food products, since plant-based foods are a huge business opportunity for food manufacturers and retailers. This figure describes the size and growth of different European plant-based markets. We see the highest plant-based sales in Germany, followed by the UK. All countries reveal huge growth rates. As not all plant-based food categories are available in each country, this figure shows only tendencies. We will find much more conclusive and exciting results in the upcoming category deep dives, where we will explore the plant-based categories in more detail. On the next slide, I would like to highlight Germany, which is the most important plant-based food market so far in Europe. Especially in the last period, sales of plant-based food in Germany grew incredible 53%. In the period before, sales grew by 24%. These numbers suggest that the coronavirus pandemic has even accelerated the growth of plant-based foods, since more and more consumers care about their health and as such choose plant-based products instead of their conventional counterparts. Discounters already sell 25% of plant-based foods in Germany, revealing that plant-based food products go really mainstream, especially addressing flexitarians, which represent 55% of the German population. So it is a highly lucrative business. In the report, you can find the results for the other countries in more detail, of course, also for the discounters business. So to wrap up this section, Euro sales of plant-based foods grew by a staggering 49% over the past 2 periods. And as such, we highly recommend to focus on the development of new plant-based food products, since plant-based foods are a huge business opportunity. All countries reveal amazing growth rates, and Germany is the most important plant-based food market so far in Europe when it comes to sales value. Well, next we will present results for the respective categories, starting with plant-based meat. Generally, the results confirm the tremendous growth of meat alternatives we expected, and we now look at the great insights we found out in terms of country and subsegment comparisons to show you the most lucrative business opportunities when it comes to plant-based meat. In the latest period, 1.4 billion euros were generated with plant-based meat in Europe. This includes both vegan and vegetarian meats. So Euro sales of plant-based meat grew 37% in this period, whereas in the period before, sales of plant-based meat grew by 23%. Comparing these two growth rates, 37 and 23%, and as such having in mind that growth in the latest period, where the pandemic broke out, was even higher than in the period before, shows that the pandemic has added to the momentum of meatless meat achieving something of mainstream status. Concerns about the spread of the coronavirus at meat packing facilities and supply chain troubles at grocery stores early in the pandemic contributed to greater demand for meatless meat. So comparing the period MAT 2018 with the period MAT 2020, sales value of plant-based meat in Europe grew from 828 million euros to incredible 1.4 billion euros, which is a tremendous growth of 68%. To give you an amazing example of this growth, last year in July, for the very first time in his 168 years of history, the German manufacturer of sausages, Rügenwalder Mühle, made more sales value with his vegan and vegetarian meat alternatives than with his conventional animal-based cold cuts and sausages. Rügenwalder Mühle entered the vegan and vegetarian meat alternatives market in 2014, by the way, so only 6 years before this happened. Well, I have another quiz for you, another poll. Which country do you think leads the plant-based meat sector in terms of sales value? The UK, Germany, Netherlands, or France? I give you again around 20 seconds to vote, and you should be able to see the poll in your screen now. So please choose your answer and press the blue submit button. Okay, yeah, you kind of have a favorite, not a clear one, but all right. Well, you think the most sales value for meat alternatives come from Germany. So, well, let's check this out if you're true. Well, actually, it's the UK, so it's not Germany. So in the UK, in the latest period, 502 million euros were made with plant-based meat. Germany is in the second position with 357 million euros, followed by the Netherlands with 174 million euros. Taking into account the population numbers of each country actually highlights the importance of some countries. For instance, the Netherlands as well, since only 17 million people are living in this country. Nearly all countries have a double-digit growth in terms of plant-based meat. For instance, German sales of plant-based meat grew by a staggering 76%. Well, what kinds of plant-based meat do people purchase the most? The next slide provides an answer to this important question for the two countries with the highest sales value, that is the UK and Germany. In the UK, the #1 plant-based meat segment, that is the segment with the highest sales value, are plant-based sausages, followed by plant-based frozen burger patties and plant-based slices. In Germany, plant-based refrigerated meat reveals the highest sales value, followed by plant-based cold cuts and meat spreads and sausages. So plant-based sausages, burger patties, and cold cuts lead the plant-based meat market in the most successful countries. In our report, you can find much more country-specific insights, also for the other countries, of course. So what are highly lucrative business opportunities then in terms of plant-based meat? The next slide provides a great outlook and gives clear recommendations. Well, plant-based refrigerated meat, burger patties, and sausages show huge sales in most countries. Plant-based frozen meat, burger patties, prepared meats, and sausages reveal the highest growth rates. So this indicates that there is a switch from plant-based refrigerated meat to plant-based frozen meat, driven by the fact that convenience is an important factor for many consumers when it comes to food. This is also supported by the fact that plant-based prepared meats are on the rise. So we recommend to always have the consumer in mind who wants to have convenient, easy to prepare, and long-lasting products. We also advise manufacturers to focus on the development of whole cuts of meat, such as steaks, which have a refined and convincing texture. In doing so, they will be kickstarting a new area in the development of plant-based meats. So to wrap the plant-based meat section up, in all European countries, we see an amazing growth of plant-based meat. The UK shows the highest plant-based meat sales, followed by Germany and the Netherlands. Especially, we recommend to develop whole cuts of meats as well as convenient plant-based meat products. Next, we will present results for plant-based milk. Generally, the results confirm as well the strong growth of milk alternatives like oat milk or almond milk, which is totally in line with what we found out from our ProVeg European consumer survey we did last year. Plant-based milk is the most purchased category when it comes to plant-based food and has truly entered mainstream. We will now look at the great insights we found out in terms of country and subsegment comparisons. In the last period, 1.6 billion euros were generated with plant-based milk in Europe. So Euro sales of plant-based milk grew incredible 23% in this period, whereas in the period before, sales of plant-based milk grew by 11%. So the market for plant-based milk in Europe is still not saturated at all, experiencing double-digit growth on a yearly basis. So in a 2 years comparison, sales value of plant-based milk in Europe grew from 1.2 billion euros to an incredible 1.6 billion euros, which is a staggering growth of 36%. Well, I have another poll for you. Which country do you think leads the plant-based milk sector in terms of sales value? Is it Spain, Germany, the UK, or Italy? I give you again 20 seconds to vote, and you should be able to see the poll on your screen now. So please choose your answer and press the blue submit button. Okay, we don't have a clear winner yet. Okay, wow, that was, yeah, okay, 43% of you think it's the UK and actually 41% Germany. So yeah, let's check it out. Well, actually this time it's Germany, not the UK. So actually the way around. So Euro sales of plant-based milk in Germany are the highest with 396 million, followed by Spain with 318 million. In all countries, we observe tremendous growth still, especially in the UK, where plant-based milk sales grew by 48% in the latest period. This indicates that the plant-based milk market is still not saturated at all in Europe. And what varieties do you think are the most purchased ones? Is it soya milk or oat milk or almond milk? Well, if we look at the top 2 plant-based milk countries, Germany and Spain, oat is the most successful plant-based milk segment. In Germany, it is followed by almond and soy, and in Spain, it is just the opposite. Soya is in the 2nd position and almond milk on the 3rd. Before closing the plant-based milk section, we would like to give clear recommendations to the food industry and retailers for plant-based milk to show you lucrative business opportunities for this plant-based category as well. Well, oat is on fire and there's no end in sight. But next to oat, there are more and more varieties on the market with tremendous growth rates, for instance, spelt or nut-based milks like cashew milk or hazelnut milk. So we clearly recommend to also have new ingredients in mind that are not mainstream yet and that are really lucrative for both the consumer and business side. Also, placing plant-based milk in the refrigerated milk segment is recommended since consumers really ask for this. In our report, you can find much more country-specific insights on this. So to summarize this section, plant-based milk is still growing tremendously, with oat being on fire and more varieties to come, like spelt or nut-based milks. Germany is leading the market in Europe, followed by Spain. We will now finally look at plant-based cheese, which is one of the most exciting and promising plant-based food categories of the future. In several studies, also in our ProVeg European Consumer Survey, results suggested that plant-based cheese shows the most potential since consumers wish for much more plant-based cheese. Not only vegetarians and vegans wish for these products, but also and especially flexitarians. Flexitarians are the most important target group, e.g. in Germany, 55% of the population state themselves as flexitarians. Furthermore, 90% of plant-based users are neither vegetarian nor vegan, they are flexitarians, so it is really highly lucrative to address them in order to reach incredible growth rates, as you will see on the next slides. Well, all right, let's start with another poll. What growth rate would you expect to see for the plant-based cheese sector over the past 2 periods? Would you expect a growth of 12, 45, 78, or even 112%? I give you again 20 seconds to vote, and you should be able to see the poll on your screen now. So please choose your answer and press the blue submit button. Okay, there's not a clear winner yet. Okay, that was also, a challenge, as you see. So 37% of you voted for a growth of 78%, and 35% of you voted for a growth of 112%. So let's check this out, what is true. So actually, the correct answer is 112%. So it's incredible. An amazing triple-digit growth rate for plant-based cheese in Europe over the past 2 years. This means that over the past 2 periods, plant-based cheese in Europe grew from 28 million euros to 60 million euros. Let us look at all 3 periods in more detail. In the last period, 60 million euros were generated with plant-based cheese in Europe, as we have already seen. So Euro sales of plant-based cheese grew 62% in this period, whereas in the period before, sales of plant-based cheese grew by 31%. To be more clear, growth rate doubled in the latest period, increasing from 31 to 62%. Like for the other plant-based food categories, these numbers suggest that the coronavirus pandemic has even accelerated the growth of plant-based cheese, since more and more consumers care about their health and as such choose plant-based products instead of their conventional counterparts. On the next slide, we will find out which European country is leading the plant-based cheese market. Well, similarly to plant-based milk, it is Germany, with amazing 44 million euro sales in the latest period. The Netherlands and the UK show similar euro sales of around 5 million respectively. Growth rates in these countries are impressive. Especially in the Netherlands, there's a staggering growth of 140%. So although the plant-based cheese market is still in its infancy, due to the fact that there are not many plant-based cheeses out there, and if so, they are not always accessible, affordable, or tasty, we highly recommend to focus on plant-based cheese development, since there's huge potential for more varieties in many more countries in Europe. Cracking the cheese code would be incredibly lucrative. Generally, and in most countries, plant-based sliced cheese leads the market. Plant-based cream cheese and grated cheese are also two of the most important subsegments in terms of plant-based cheese. In our report, you find much more information on the plant-based cheese market and its subsegments for the countries. Well, to summarize the section on plant-based cheese, growth of plant-based cheese in Europe is really staggering. And even though plant-based cheese is still in its infancy, it is one of the most exciting and promising plant-based food categories of the future, since consumers wish for these products, as shown in several surveys. Next, we will present results for plant-based yogurt. So generally, the results confirm as well the strong growth of yogurt alternatives. The ProVeg European Consumer Survey that was published last year revealed that plant-based yogurt is an important category in the plant-based dairy category, according to consumers. So we will now look at the real sales numbers behind plant-based yogurt. In the last period, 405 million euros were generated with plant-based yogurt in Europe. So Euro sales of plant-based yogurt grew 22% in this period, whereas in the period before, sales of plant-based yogurt grew 12%. So in a 2 years comparison, this is a tremendous growth of 37% of plant-based yogurts in Europe. So this market is also not saturated at all yet, and we also expect this to be a huge business opportunity. From the ProVeg European Consumer Survey, we know that plant-based yogurts still do not meet the needs of consumers, especially the needs of flexitarians, which are the most important target group when it comes to plant-based food. While yogurt is generally seen as a healthy product by many consumers, many of the most commonly available plant-based yogurts are quite sugary and contain artificial ingredients, so there's a lot of room for improvement. On the next slide, we find out which country in Europe has the highest plant-based yogurt sales. So similarly to plant-based milk and plant-based cheese, it is Germany with amazing 127 million euro sales between October 2019 and September 2020. This is followed by France with 87 million euro sales. Nearly all countries have a double-digit growth rate. Germany has the highest one of incredible 44%. Before we conclude with the plant-based yogurt deep dive, the next slide provides final insights on the yogurt subsegments. So is it all about soya yogurt when it comes to plant-based yogurt? Let's check this out. Well, actually, it's kind of. Soya is by far the leading segment in Europe. However, there are also more and more coconut yogurts available, so that coconut yogurt comes in second, followed by other plant-based yogurts like almond or oat alternatives. We witness new product development towards local ingredients like oats, and we expect here as well huge growth opportunities if food industry puts effort into developing better plant-based yogurts. So to wrap up the section on plant-based yogurt, the plant-based yogurt market is still growing tremendously, consisting mainly of soya yogurt so far. There is a lot of room for improvement in terms of product development, so we advise manufacturers to focus on new ingredients like oat. Germany is leading the market in Europe, followed by France. Well, before we come to our final recommendation, the next section provides sales numbers for plant-based fish in Germany. Plant-based fish is one of the most lucrative business opportunities when it comes to plant-based product development, since the selection of plant-based seafood generally available is very limited and mostly consists of fish fingers or crumb fish burgers. Due to the fact that plant-based fish products are still in its infancy, we are really excited to present you amazing sales numbers and incredible growth rates for this plant-based food category now. Well, in the last period, 1.9 million euros were generated with plant-based fish in Germany. So euro sales of plant-based fish grew 190% in this period. Whereas in the period before, also a triple-digit growth rate existed already of 149%. Although sales of plant-based fish are still on a low level, it is overwhelming to see that triple-digit growth rates are kind of the new normal when it comes to plant-based fish, indicating that plant-based fish is one of the fastest growing plant-based food segments, together with plant-based cheese. So plant-based fish and seafood are a huge business opportunity for the food industry. This finding is also underlined by the fact that in the most recent period, plant-based fish entered the discounters market in Germany, having a share of already 13% here. So this also explains the unstoppable growth of plant-based fish in Germany. So comparing MAT 2018 with MAT 2020, plant-based fish sales increased by a staggering triple-digit growth rate of 623% in Germany. This means that over the past 2 years, plant-based fish in Germany grew from 261,000 euros to 1.9 million euros. Before closing the plant-based fish session, we would like to give some advices to the food industry and retailers for this plant-based food category as well, to show you amazing and lucrative business opportunities. As indicated, the selection of plant-based seafood and fish generally available is very limited and mostly consists of fish fingers or crumb fish burgers. So we advise manufacturers to develop and launch fish fillets and other popular fish products in order to fill the unmet demand in the market. According to a recent consumer survey done by the Consumer Advice Center in Hessen in Germany, a typical fish flavor is crucial when it comes to plant-based fish, as well as a similar chewing feeling as for conventional fish products. Most plant-based fish products do not meet the needs of consumers yet, since these products are too processed or include too many additives. On the other side, many nutrients are missing, like omega-3 fatty acids, iodine, or vitamin B12. Furthermore, consumers are not satisfied with the prices of plant-based fish. So there's a lot of room for improvement in this plant-based food category for sure. And as such, we also highly recommend to work on the plant-based fish ingredients as well as the prices for these products. similar as for plant-based cheese actually. So a quick summary on plant-based fish. Plant-based fish, although still in its infancy, is one of the most lucrative business opportunities in the plant-based food space, with Germany showing a triple-digit growth rate of 623%. First sales in discounters happened in the latest period, indicating that plant-based fish and seafood are a huge business opportunity for the food industry and retailers. We advise to develop and launch plant-based fish fillets and other plant-based fish products as well, and as well to improve the ingredients and prices of these products, since this is what consumers are asking for. Before I will go on with our final recommendation, I would like to mention that in the report, you will find much more information. For instance, also numbers on plant-based ice cream or numbers on volume sales for all plant-based food categories. So we highly recommend to download our report. Well, overall, plant-based consumption is growing at record levels across Europe. And this webinar showed the unstoppable growth of the European plant-based food sector over the last few years. The market data has revealed enormous potential growth opportunities for developing and launching new plant-based food products in multiple food categories. Expansion of plant-based product portfolios not only means a diversification of risk, but also represents a means of future-proofing businesses. Creating delicious and healthy plant-based food enables consumers to choose products that are good for all, humans, animals, and the planet, establishing a win-win situation. Our 6 final recommendations are based on the whole European market and offer a green light to the food industry in terms of pursuing more plant-based options. So this is what you should definitely remember after we close the webinar. Well, the sales data revealed a tremendous growth of 49% in the last 2 periods in the European plant-based food market. So our first recommendation is to take the opportunity on plant-based food. You can expect huge sales and staggering growth rates. Plant-based milk and plant-based meat have reached high euro sales and show amazing growth rates. So our second recommendation is to consider to develop even more plant-based options in these categories. In order to fill the unmet demand in the plant-based meat market, we advise manufacturers to focus on the development of whole cuts of meats, as well as on convenient, easy to prepare and long-lasting products. Our fourth recommendation is to think about new ingredients like spelt or nuts in the plant-based milk segment, since these ingredients are lucrative business opportunities next to oat milk, which is on fire. Also, placing plant-based milk in the refrigerated milk segment is recommended, since consumers have a need for this and really ask for this. Plant-based cheese has been skyrocketing in the Netherlands, revealing a growth rate of incredible 140% here, and in Germany, one of 77%. So try to launch convincing plant-based cheese varieties in many more countries. And last but not least, the market data also revealed that in Germany, plant-based fish is on fire with 623% growth rate over the past 2 periods, and even first sales in discounters. So plant-based fish is one of the most lucrative plant-based food categories of the future, and our final recommendation is to include plant-based fish in your product range. Well, all six recommendations in a nutshell can be found on this slide. And in order to get much more insights on all countries separately, We highly recommend to download the Smart Protein Plant-Based Food Sector Report, which also includes sales volume, next to sales value, and discounters numbers. So we now go on with our Q&A, and I'm really excited about your questions.
Thank you so much, Kai-Brit. I'm sure everyone really enjoyed that. And before we get to the questions, just want to let all the audience know that if you would like to stay informed about plant-based developments or about the Smart Protein, please sign up for our dedicated newsletters, which we do send out completely free of charge. We will be sharing links to these in the chat, and we will also be sharing links to these and to this presentation by email to all of the people who have registered for the webinar in the next few days. So please keep a lookout for that. Also, I have been seeing there's a lot of chat happening, a lot of networking happening. If you haven't had a look, there are a lot of people sharing what they do in different countries in Europe, even some comments from South Africa. So that's great. If you haven't had a look, go have a look there. We do have a lot of questions, and unfortunately we don't have all the time in the world, so we're going to see how we get through, and we'll see if we can keep Kai-Brit on for a little bit longer if we need. So Kai-Brit, the first question, definitely the most common question that came up, we want to see some context. How do these numbers compare to the animal agriculture industry, both in terms of growth rates and in terms of like the percentage that plant-based makes of the total market?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, actually. There's a really great prediction done by Kearney. So the market for conventional meat will decrease at an annual rate of -3%, while plant-based and cultured meat alternatives will grow significantly. So we see in the Nielsen data double-digit growth rates for plant-based meat and also many other plant-based food categories on a yearly basis. So this is kind of the new normal when it comes to plant-based meat. Kearney also predicted that by 2030, plant-based meat alternatives and cultured meat will have a market share of nearly 30% of the $1.4 trillion business. And by 2040, their market share is expected to be 60%. 60% of the $1.8 trillion global meat market. So it is clearly about growth rates, which are really impressive in terms of plant-based meat.
Well, that's staggering, and obviously that's great news for anyone in the sector. One of the other questions that we got a lot of is just about the scope and scale of the data from Nielsen. I'm going to ask two questions here. The first one being, how much of the market does Nielsen cover? Because there will be some outlets that Nielsen point of sale data doesn't cover. And then also, does it cover food services, restaurants, and the food industry on that side?
Yeah, actually, generally speaking, Nielsen retail scanning data is the most valid and reliable data you can have when it comes to supermarket sales. So Nielsen data has an extremely high coverage for all food categories, and its focus is clearly retail scanning data. So all products you buy at Tesco or at Rewe or at Carrefour or wherever is scanned. Every product is scanned, and this scanning data is Nielsen data. So all data is coming from the retail business, from the supermarkets. It does not include food service chains.
So then a follow-up question to that, someone asked, do you think that after the Corona lockdown restrictions, we will see any of these numbers decrease when people do start eating at restaurants again?
No, I don't expect this at all, actually. And this is what we clearly see in the numbers. The growth already happened long before coronavirus pandemic broke out. So double-digit or even triple-digit growth rates have long been happening before Corona broke out. And Corona is only kind of an accelerator of this whole plant-based movement, as we've seen. And yeah, that's, I hope, a clear answer.
Yes, it is, I think. And I mean, you did mention it in the talk, but I don't know if you want to just say a few more words on whether whether there is strong evidence that Corona is responsible for some of these changes, or is that just an insight that you're sort of guessing from the data?
Yeah, I know that, of course, this is not survey data. We did not ask people, okay, do you eat now more plant-based products because Corona broke out and you care more about your health now? But in the end, what we observe in the data is that the growth rate in the latest period, and this is the period where the pandemic broke out, between October 2019 until September 2020, that these growth rates are almost always even higher than in the period before. So again, the pandemic is an accelerator of the whole movement, but the movement and this amazing growth already happened long before Corona. So we clearly expect this to continue even when the pandemic is over, because in the end, it clearly showed how valuable the whole food supply chain is. And we have had so many scandals in meat production facilities. Again, this whole movement was already long before Corona, the amazing growth rates.
Okay, great. Now I've got another question sort of about the definitions of some of the categories, and also I'm gonna blend two questions together here. The first one is the definition of plant-based meat alternative. The person just wanted to double check that didn't include things like bean and lentil burgers that aren't trying to mimic meat. And then the other question related to that is, where does tofu fit in here? Do we have any data on the sales of tofu?
Yeah, it's also a very good question. Actually, I would highly recommend to check the country reports, because this clearly depends on the country, what is what included in which category. Yeah. Okay, great. And in some, sorry, Don, one more note on this. You will see in the whole report, depending on the country, that the sub-segments, of course, vary depending on the country. But it's important to note here as well that for the European comparison here, we've shown today, vegan and vegetarian meat alternatives were included to really compare them between countries. For some countries, we even have the vegan alternative separately. So we clearly see differences between vegan and vegetarian meats, but this is always a factor or question on the data availability done by Nielsen. Okay, great. So we will be able to give people some more granular data on, on this. Yeah. And then I've got a question about a similar question, but eggs, plant-based eggs. Is that not a huge opportunity? It is definitely a huge opportunity, but until now, the Nielsen data does not include egg alternatives. But it is a huge opportunity, I can say for sure. Yeah. Great. And then we saw a few comments in the chat and also in the Q&A about this figure that you gave for 55% of Germans being flexitarian. That's obviously an amazing number. Where did that number come from? And are we confident that that's quite accurate? Yeah, actually that was a survey done by Forsa. And Forsa did this for the Agricultural Ministry in Germany in 2020, so last year. So it's really an amazing source for this. And 55% of Germans state themselves as flexitarians, which is really incredible, because this clearly means that if you're still an omnivore, you're kind of in the minority in Germany. This means that it's the new normal to reduce your meat and dairy consumption. And at some point you mentioned the European Plant-Based Consumer Survey, and we've just had a couple of questions about exactly what that was and maybe the key findings from that. Yeah. Actually, ProVeg did a European Consumer Survey on plant-based food that we published last year in summer. We also did a great webinar on it, by the way, which is also available for free on the ProVeg website. You can also find the whole report here. So everything is available for free. Everything you can download for free on the ProVeg website, the whole report. We also did country reports on it, which are also available on the ProVeg website, and also the webinar we did on it. To maybe summarize quickly the findings of it, actually most findings for us as experts in the plant-based business were kind of obvious, but I know that for the broad audience, it's not that obvious. So the most missed plant-based food category in Europe is actually plant-based cheese. And this is quite obvious because there are not many plant-based cheeses out there. And if so, they are not really affordable, tasty, or even available. And if so, they are quite, have a high price point and so on. So plant-based cheese is by far the most missed product category. But we have so many more insights, which I feel is the best if you download the report, look at the outcomes, and yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to answer a question that I like the answer to. Someone just asked how many people have attended this webinar, and I've been keeping track, and I think we got up to 397. So it's really great to see so much interest in this topic. Another question that came in is sort of the questions around fortification of food and clean label. Is any of the data that we're looking at here able to tell us if the consumers are looking for fortification and if they are looking for less processed products?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point and important question. Actually, we know for sure that clean label and fortification is a big topic. We know from several surveys and data that consumers really care about a clean label. That means they also care that products are minimally processed. So there's still a lot of work to do when we're talking about plant-based food, because obviously many of these products could be really improved, what we found out and what we see. In the Nielsen data itself, we did not include this factor like fortification or clean label. But in the end, it's a really important topic. And I would also like to make some promotion. Within Smart Protein, we're also doing a big European consumer survey in 10 different European countries, being directed at many topics like barriers and drivers and so on, to buy and consume plant-based food products. And we're right now in the field work of it. And this report will be published in autumn this year. So we will totally address also these topics then as well.
Another, I think, very interesting topic. Someone just asked about whether or not we have started seeing or expected to see a decrease in consumption of plant-based dairy products because of the new regulations around labeling.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would say a quite political point. Amendment 171 is addressed to forbid dairy-related terms on plant-based dairy products like yogurt style or creamy or tasty. And this is so obvious that this is really not a good idea to say it kind of easily. For instance, Forsa conducted a survey in Germany, which was done for the German consumer group. And they found out that most consumers are totally not confused about terms like meaty names on plant-based meat and so on. So only 4% bought a wrong product by mistake. And there's another survey on it done by the European Consumer Organization that was published last year in summer. And they found out that nearly 70% of consumers stated that meaty names should be permitted or do not see any problems at all with using such names. So no, this won't kind of limit the amazing growth of dairy or meat alternatives, which we now totally see in sales numbers.
We're technically out of time, but Kai-Brit has said she will stick around for 5 more minutes, so we are going to do a few more questions, and I think this is an important one as well. The question around the price of the alternative products. Are we seeing the prices coming down as scale is increased, and do you think that that's going to play a big part in progress in the future?
Yeah, that's a very, very good and important question. Price points of most alternatives are still too high, being driven by a lot of factors, also by politics and so on. And this is crucial, actually. In the end, we need similar price points between plant-based and conventional counterparts products. And if this happens, then you can be sure that there will be even much more sales increases like we've already seen now, because price is always crucial. Price and taste are the two crucial factors when we speak about food for everyone, especially for flexitarians. They want to have good value for money products that have similar prices to the animal-based counterparts. So, and as well, tasty and familiar products. But good news, if these factors all come together, you can expect really even more growth of all these categories that we've already seen. And what I also would like to add here is that we see more and more private label meat alternatives and milk alternatives and so on, especially also in discounters, but also in supermarkets. And this is also clearly a sign that the whole development is going mainstream and being offered to similar price points like the conventional counterparts.
Yeah, that's great. Another question just about how the countries were selected for the study and whether or not there is a plan to include more countries in the near future.
Yeah, that's also a very good question. Actually, it's a 10 million EU funded project, Smart Protein. So as Don already said in the beginning, there are more than 30 partners being included. And so this was also an important topic to cover. Yeah, countries that are of high relevance for the partners, but also, of course, for Europe. So we covered all countries in all kind of regions in Europe, in the northern part, eastern part, south part, and so on, middle part, and also being based on the economic value, of course, and the number of inhabitants in the respective countries. And yes, okay. By the way, we're planning more research on this, and we really hope to do this on an annual basis, because the market is really developing in a super dynamic way. And for this, we would love to include more and more countries, of course.
So we are short of time now. We are going to share the contact details for the Smart Protein project. So if anyone has questions that haven't been answered, I'm really sorry we weren't able to get through all of them. But we will share those details, and you can email us afterwards. We will try our best. And obviously, ProVeg is open to working with in a consulting capacity with any companies who are looking to get into the space. Before you all leave, I just want to tell you about 2 events that ProVeg is hosting that are coming up. The first one being New Food Invest, which aims to leverage the promising developments we've heard about today in the alternative protein space. It'll be the world's first virtual conference focusing exclusively on bringing together international plant-based and cultured food startups, investors, and key stakeholders. So please have a look at that. We will share those details as well. And then the New Food Conference on the 28th and 29th of April is a unique industry-oriented event that aims to accelerate and empower the innovation that we've been speaking about today by bringing together key stakeholders. It is Europe's first and biggest conference on new protein solutions. So please, we hope to see you there. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for the comments. Just to let Kai-Brit have the last word. If there's one takeaway you want to leave everyone with before they go out into the world again, what would that be?
Yeah, well, the Nielsen market data and also many surveys reveal enormous potential growth opportunities for developing and launching new plant-based products in multiple food categories. And as such, one key takeaway is that plant-based food is not a trend. It represents a fundamental shift in food consumption, being even accelerated by COVID-19.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kai-Brit, and thank you to the audience, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks a lot.